We were doing a sound check earlier. Megan, would you like to imitate some of the noises you thought were appropriate for our sound check?
Oh, what was it? It was like,
I was like, give me a little of the sound you might make during the show. And she goes, ah.
and then I couldn't stop giggling. Oh, here it goes.
Hi, everyone. My name is David, and this is
Megan, his wife.
Megan.
Hello.
And this is Dress for the Podcast You Want. It's a podcast about success, and we're feeling it.
And we're giggly.
Are you feeling successful?
Yeah, I guess so right now.
You made me giggle.
I didn't know that was the theme of this podcast. I might be in the wrong room.
You're here for Botany 102. You are in the wrong audio booth.
Oh, jeez.
And with us today is our guest. Which one do you want? I call him Gordy Boudreau.
Yeah, that's what I call myself.
Hi, Gordy. I didn't know if you did Gordon ever.
Oh, I only get yelled at with that name. That's what my wife calls me. And
please don't call me Gordon.
That's my bad name.
Gordon.
Hi, Gordy. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm really well. Yes, this is a lot of fun. I've never done anything like this before.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm excited because today is a special episode of Dress for the Podcast You Want.
Why is that, David?
Megan, do you know why it's a special episode?
I only sort of know because you told me right before.
Gordy, do you know why it's a special episode?
I have no idea.
It's a special episode because today is the 69th episode of Dress for the Podcast You Want.
Oh, I'm going to have to delve through the layers of metaphor right now.
We were looking around and I was like, we're like, all right, who's on the guest list and what episode would they be right for? And then I was like, perfect.
That wasn't planned? It
was only half planned. It was planned in that were you going to be on episode 67, 68, or 69? And
I see.
Duh.
So it's 34 and a half planned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because for those of you who don't know, and maybe you couldn't be fucked to listen to the intro, but Gordy has a character in a show called, the show is called The Wildly Inappropriate Poetry of Arthur Greenleaf Holmes. And Gordy is just a brilliant poet of renown and perversity. And, it's just great. We're going to get into a lot, but we got to start at the beginning. So Gordy.
Yes.
Do you consider yourself a successful person?
Oh, geez. Isn't that a question for other people to answer about me?
I always love the noises that happen.
Am I successful? You know what? That actually is an interesting question because I think it makes its way into my show. I think there's no small amount of shame on my part with what I do. And I think that there's a little guy inside of me that's judging me in relation to my family, my siblings, who I think are incredibly successful. And I don't know what to make of myself. Sometimes I'm horrified by the choices I've made. But I mean, I guess I'm successful in the sense that I have a show that I love doing. And in fact, I don't think I'd ever want to do any other show that I've seen. The show that I do is exactly what I want to do.
You've been doing it long enough that I feel like if there were something else you wanted to be doing, that probably would have struck you by now.
What is it, like 10, 15 years of this character? Something like that?
Well, the character started in 2007. The show started in 2011.
Wow.
So 9 years of doing a show. Yeah, you'd think that if I just looked out my window, I would have seen something else to do. But I'm very domestic.
You said isn't that a question for other people to answer about you? Do you think other people would say that you're successful, or do you are there groups of people that would and groups of people that wouldn't?
Oh, and I see what you're doing here. Now you're trying to. That's a roundabout way of me answering whether I think I'm successful.
No, I got your answer. Your answer was ooh, and that was what that's canon.
I always love those noises that come after the question.
Yeah.
You know what? When I stand on stage and I look at the audience out there, and I think that this is really a show about poetry, and most people, when you say, "Hey, I would like to recite a poem for you," they might sort of wince a little bit internally, and they do the polite thing and endure it with that little plastic smile for a while. But so I am very pleased that people come to a show knowing that it's poetry. Maybe they haven't seen it before and they think, but by the end of it, it's a different energy in the audience. So yes, on that level, I suppose, let's be honest, I'm probably successful at that.
And, we categorize success in a lot of different ways. And the one that we're talking about right now is professional. And here's the thing. We can get combative about it, right? Fuck you, you are successful. Like you said, you have a show. Well, all right, come here. Let me kiss it, make it better. You have a show that you love doing that people love watching,
Literally all over the country.
Yes, literally.
Well,
I don't think I've seeped into the Texas Panhandle yet.
Okay,
that's a very specific.
Very, they don't want me there. But yeah, I guess most of the country. Yeah, I guess Minnesota, the South, the deep South. Florida, New York, Pennsylvania.
I mean, that's successful if you could bring something of what I guess most people would consider to be out of a niche market and bring it down there and still be able to do it for 10 to 15 years. That's pretty cool.
And another gauge of that is when I go to a new show and no one has ever seen this show before and they wander in, and to see the energy change, to see their expression change, and then to see those people come back again for another show. That's how do
you do it? You're so brave. I met Gordy. I met Gordy virtually. I got introduced to Gordy and Gordy's show, and was brought in on a sort of artistic producerial capacity, and went and saw it for the first time in Pennsylvania. Maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
What, Pennsylvania Ren Fair?
Yeah. And the first thing I see of Gordy is him, not to talk about him like he's not here, but you're walking around and you're just sort of engaging with people and talking to people and handing them your card and telling them about your show. And I love acting. Acting's great. Talking to strangers like that, is that something you had to learn to do? Or is that something that it just comes to you naturally?
I think a lot of it came from doing Renaissance festivals, and learning a style of improv that I think that I've ultimately come to reject. And by that I mean the big scene improv, the big I'm going to do improv for you right now. And we were always taught that sort of style. But in going out onto the street, that's what we call the times in between your stage shows. We call it street work. And going out there,
I thought you were going to say street walking.
I found a different kind of improvisational work, and that was walking out into an exchange of people and having really authentic interactions with them. And I think that came out of a certain energy that I can't be using that word energy, but that's the thing that just excites me about this kind of performing is to follow a certain energy that you feel when you're surrounded by people who are coming and going, and there's all this material right in front of you. And I think that I learned it by doing it.
Wow.
But there's one of the reasons I enjoy working at Renaissance festivals is not because I love the period or I enjoy wearing leotards, but I think that you're set up with so much stuff to work with. First of all, you're given a context, you're given a character, and then these people come and they want to be engaged. They want to see these characters, and you have a different kind of performing. This idea that stand-up comedy is the purest form of comedy, I'm not sure that I agree with that, because sometimes it's felt antiseptic to me to walk out onto a dark stage and have people sitting there waiting for you to make them laugh. Whereas at the kind of improvisational festival that I work at, you get people just going about their business, and it's almost like you're in a city street and you're looking at everything that's happening, and people can come and go as they want. They can leave if you're not interested, and it feels a little bit more authentic to me.
Does it ever go bad?
Oh, of course.
Really?
Of course, but you can run away.
You can literally run away from them.
You can't do that in a comedy club. You can say, this is just a moment in a character's life, and I said something that wasn't funny, but we say things that aren't funny all the time. This podcast is one glaring example.
The podcast doesn't have to be funny. The podcast can be sad if we want it to be.
Sure.
Do we want to make?
You want? Are you saying that like you want to go in that direction?
I'm just saying. Hey, we can. You want to get sad, Megan?
It's been a rough week.
Yeah,
Let's
it's gonna
keep
be
it.
really. It's gonna be really disjointed if we do that.
Megan, tell me about your childhood.
You
Oh.
tell me about your childhood.
Okay.
Okay, fine.
Well, I think it all started when a man walked up to me at a Renaissance fair and asked me because you started in that, like, you I don't know, give us the spiel, right? The poet of the alleyways and the like. Give us the grand tour.
Well, I was hired to play a poet, and I was just thinking about, well, what am I going to do with this? I mean, should I recite other people's poetry? Should I write? I didn't want to write stupid, silly nursery rhyme sort of parodies, and I didn't want to do the Andrew Dice Clay thing. But I thought,
I can even imagine.
why don't I actually try to write poetry? Because I have an education. I was an English major. And I grew up reading and listening to poetry, and I thought, well, there are a lot of quote unquote poet comedians that I've seen, and for some reason they seem to shortchange the poetic aspect of it, right? And I always wondered why that was. I always wondered why when you heard a novelty song that was supposed to be a funny song, it always seems to be sung in a kind of novelty song voice that I find annoying. I mean, why don't you just sing the song and make it what it is? And if it's funny, people will laugh, but you don't have to signal to them that it's going to be funny by the silly voice that you sing it in. And there's a similar thing that was going on when I was starting to do this stuff. I thought, well, if I can actually make this poetic, if I can actually use the language and the meter and the imagery of the kind of poetry that I studied in college and high school, then also make it funny, then maybe that's a different experience for people. And so I started writing these poems, and at the time, I didn't know how far I could go. I mean, a lot of these shows bill themselves as family-friendly festivals. Yeah, that's a laugh.
Amazing.
And so I think the first poem I wrote was called "I Bought a Cheese and Thought of You," and people liked it, and it was fun. And then I went a little bit further. I wrote a poem called "The Wee Irishman," and at every turn of the screw, I found that my employers were saying that I could actually go further. I could actually get away with it.
Oh, funny.
But I'm convinced that the reason I could get away with it was because it wasn't just a string of vulgarities.
Mm-hmm.
There was a use of language, and I've seen it. It's almost like a fix that people get when they hear it. They hear a certain use of language that they haven't heard in a while, and it changes them.
Hosted on dimlywit.com.